Ladies and gentlemen, I am currently away from home on a little vacation in Europe. Now, actually, a lot of you in the comment section have invited me to your hometown, and I will tell you that I will visit Europe again, and I'll probably hit a lot more cities than this time. But I'm currently in Amsterdam. And let me tell you something right now. What ruins a vacation? Getting your luggage lost, getting some train or flight delays, maybe you have a really bad experience somewhere, get scammed. Now, turns out none of those things happened to me, but I am in Amsterdam for King's Day by total accident. And today was kind of wild, but none of that ruined my day. What ruined my day is what I am going to cover in this video. Didn't just ruin my day, it ruined my vacation. In fact, I'm going home immediately now that I saw this chess game. And I would like to blame a subscriber by the name of Dan. All of you, if any of you are named Dan, this might be your game. Also might be Dan's game. And if you're not named Dan, you didn't ruin my vacation yet. This was sent in to me a day or two ago, and I am still thinking about it. And I'm going to share it with all of you. Dan was playing somebody by the name of Kazım from Turkey. Both players get honorary Grandmaster titles because they got featured in a Gotham video. That is the entire introduction for this game. Please sit back, relax. And if you get motion sickness, yeah, you might want to keep a barf bag close for this one. Or you might just want to keep a barf bag close for this one because, well, we'll see. So the game opens with e4, standard behavior, e5. Here you can develop a knight or a bishop, but another thing that's useful to do, especially in the beginning when you're learning the golden moves of chess, is to put two pawns in the center supported by the knights. Dan does that anyway, even though Black's second move is also fighting for the center with a pawn, therefore making it impossible for White to casually stroll into the center with two pawns, right? Because then Black will capture, and this is considered an inaccuracy because White will have a queen in the center, and that will allow, Black to do this. Now, modern engines and modern analysis show you can go back and, the position is about equal and it is what it is. But as a beginner, you really shouldn't play moves like d4. But evidently Kazım makes his own rules because Kazım does the exact same thing. So both guys now have just 4 pawns in the center. See, both guys got the How to Win at Chess book by Gotham, and they said, and they saw that they have to put 2 pawns, 2 knights, 2 bishops in the center, so they're just going to do it. Like, the pieces don't actually interact with each other. By the way, you see this? This is kind of how I was today in King's Day. You can't go forward, you can't go back. You just kind of hope the crowd keeps moving. Absolutely terrifying. And I did think, like, what if there's a medical emergency? Luckily, there wasn't. Although there was, just not when I was there. I heard a good amount of ambulances. So anyway, once these folks get tired of rubbing against each other, as the Dutch do here in Amsterdam on King's Day, White plays this move f3. You're not developing a knight. You're not. Dan spent a lot of time on that move, 12 seconds, coming up with this beauty. The thing about the move f3 is that it straight up loses the game because the idea of this move is to defend the center pawn, and upon capturing, queen to h4 check is absolutely lethal. Whenever you move your f-pawn, you've got to be careful about this check because normally you can block, but in this position, that would result in you losing a rook. Whereas in this position, it would not because the pawn is still protected. So f3 technically doesn't make sense. And in general, when you're playing White, you kind of want to take first in the center because when the center opens up, Black will lose the right to castle, you will develop and attack the pawn, and then your bishop will come out, etc. This is not the way to go. Now, Black plays knight f6. Knight f6 is accidentally an okay move, but it's not a good move either because White can just play a completely free pawn here, targeting the knight. Goes from bad to worse because when Black plays something like knight d7, you'll play queen d5 and just be 2 pawns up. Life will be good. But after knight to f6, Dan thinks for a while, plays knight c3. So again, big battle here for the center of the board. Still, a flawed approach where neither guy is taking the other person's pawns, but they're 400, so it's like a miracle they even know how to boot up a rated game on chess.com. Knight c6. Now, I gotta tell you, Kazum is impressing me quite a bit. Like 2 pawns, 2 knights, very principled, very good stuff by Kazum. Really enjoying this type of play. White plays bishop e3. So now we've kind of gone back to regular development. Both players are developing their pieces, but for some reason, I mean, nobody wants to touch the center, which I find very funny. Kazum now plays bishop to b4, which is another very good move, putting some pressure, right, with some attacks like here. And look, this is a pin, and it's annoying, but the knight is protected. So if I'm playing with white here, again, I'm thinking to take, or I'm thinking to at least target the bishops. Like a lot of the time when a piece comes out and pins you, just attacking it will get your opponent to take. And yes, black can take this pawn. Black could have taken that pawn the last like 6 moves. I think it's safe to say black is not going to do that. But anyway, what you don't really want to do is make a pin worse. So frequently, if you're pinned, a last resort should be double pinning yourself. So you were pinned to your king, now you're pinned to your queen, which, while the only difference being that you can now move your knight, as in it's legal, it's a bad move. And here Kazum wakes up, and you know, every 400 rated player, every 800 rated player, 12, 1600, whatever, has a moment in their career where they kind of awaken. You ever seen like Men in Black or some of these like movies like Matrix, and the play, you know, somebody awakens, they have this big moment. This is like when you open your eyes and now all of a sudden pawn takes pawn. It's a great move. And the idea is very simple. I think basically Kazum was like, oh, white cannot take. White pinned himself, which means his knight is immobile, which means I'm going to take in the center. And white responded pawn takes, because that was always the idea. And see, Kazum went tunnel vision on this pawn, which is fine. But when he took, one thing you always need to keep in mind as a noob, what opened up, right? And the queen opened up. So now this is lethal. And white just loses because white put pawns out in the center, didn't develop the right way, weakened their king, pinned themselves. They did a bunch of blunders, like a bunch of, you know, bad moves, and black punished them. But okay, instead of that, you know, Kazum finds this. And like I said, that was an awakening moment. There was a pin there, and he took, and then he took again. And now he's just up a pawn, but it's about to get a whole lot worse because he's probably going to take the knight and probably get in. Queen d3 is an excellent move, counterattacking the knight. And in this position, my man Kazum detonates, like, I can't believe he played this move. So the knight is hanging, right? The knight sees the knight. Like, most people here just play knight c3. It's just what they play. And then here they play bishop a5, and the game goes on. My man Kazum plays bishop f5. That is a brilliant move for the 447 rating. That's an excellent move. The idea being that anywhere you move the knight now, you attack the rook. So for example, if white plays knight f3, knight to g3 is an attack on the queen and the rook. That's what I meant. Queen and rook at the same time. You got to be a little careful. Like, I guess you can also, you know, maybe play knight f2, but play knight f2, the bishop is not protected. So the knight is trapped in the corner, and white got a bishop. That's the reason you actually have to play knight g3. It's instructive. It's a very common tactical pattern. White plays queen c4, getting out of the way, and again is completely lost because of the move pawn takes. I mean, my man. My man. Now, you know it's a, you know it's one of these videos, so nobody wins the game from here. The only person that wins this game is the spectator of this game, which all of you are. So pawn takes d4. Black is now up 2 pawns. Black is now forking bishop and knight. Black is going to break into the position. White completely disregards both attacks, plays bishop to d3, which is an interesting way of fighting back, and I guess the idea was that pawn takes, bishop takes. That hangs checkmate in 2, by the way, but I don't think Kazum would have seen queen d2 check. Not because Kazum hasn't played well, but because this is such a rare thing that the enemy queen could just walk into the territory of the opponent 10 moves into the game like this, but it happens when you don't respect your king. So, d takes c3 played in the game. Right, bishop d3 was played, so pawn takes c3. Black is now up 5 points of material. Kazum spent a whopping, I don't know how much time that is, 33, 47 seconds on this move. And now black is completely winning, because after takes, you take like this, then you take the rook, and then you are just dominating. And if after dc3 your opponent continues with their plan, like Dan did, c takes b2 is a really bad wake-up call, because now you're in check, and black is going to take a rook and make a queen. So black is going to get 14 points of material in one move. And that kind of sucks. if white goes here and then this, white will probably take here and probably get the bishop, but at the end of the day, black has an extra queen, so like black's gonna, bring the queen back and just win the game, or bring the queen in and just go for mate with. But yeah, c takes b2 is game over, and Dan's completely lost. And then in this position, Dan plays a move which might be historic. Dan plays a move which might be one of the most lopsided moves in the history of chess. So like I just said, black is going to win a rook and get a new queen. So black is going to get 8 more points because the pawn will disappear, right? Black's going to get 8 more points, meaning queen -1. This is going to be 8, plus a rook. So 13 points are going to go to black. Dan decides he actually wants 19 points to go to black, and he takes the bishop. So with this one move, Daniel loses a queen for a bishop, which is 9-3, 6, loses a rook with a check. So that's 8, right? That's 14 points. And now this. And that was impressive. That was a massive turnaround. What just happened there? So in the original version of this position, like let's say b takes, black was up 16 points. In this version of the game, after queen takes b4 takes, black is now up 22 points of material. And Dan proceeds to make his problems even greater by not taking the free bishop, which I suppose he didn't see, but rather going over here. And he is now down minus 49.6 on the eval bar. He is down minus 21. And if I let the engine think for a little longer, there's going to be an M in the evaluation. And, usually around this time, the opponent starts doing really stupid stuff, right? Like Dan, by the way, to Dan's credit, Dan, I don't know, is trying to use his bishops. He should probably use his bishops by hitting himself over the head with them with some of the moves he's played, but it's life. And, Dan could have hit the resign button. Dan could have closed out of the app. He could have, yelled about the fact that chess is not fair. And he's probably, like knowing the prodigies that are from Turkey right now, this is probably a 3-year-old. Like, this is probably not a grown, 40-year-old dude who runs like a cafe in Istanbul. This is probably like a 3-year-old child named Kazım. And Dan is losing to him, and there's no shame in that because Kazım's going to be a grandmaster in 5 years. But Kazım does not make any mistakes. He plays queen to d2 check. He finds queen to d2, king f3, and then he uses the second queen, and that's really the problem. If he's going to start using his queen, it's over. And king g3 is on the board. Now, a couple of moments ago, I wonder if there was a checkmate in 2. There wasn't. So here we have a fun challenge, which is, can you find all the checkmates in 1? This is mate in 1. This is mate in 1. So both queens going to f4 is mate in 1. And queen g5 is mate in 1. I don't think there's another one, because you cannot take on g2. Even if you could, there would be king h4. The problem is you have to take away the h4 square. You can only do that from these 2 squares. So both of these moves, queen f4 by both and queen g5, are mate in 1. Kazım plays queen c3. Can you blame him? It's a fork, right? Knight f3. Wait a minute. But knight f3 loses the rook. So now, after this move, black is up 26 points of material. And mind you, there is only 39 points of material on a chessboard, if you add it up. That's really bad. But knight to f3 proved to be a very clever move from Dan, because after king g3, queen c3, knight to f3, Kazım took the bishop. And his advantage went from mate in 8, mate in 1, queen c5. He lost his queen. But generally, losing your queen is bad in chess. Not in this case. The most insane thing about this position is black could lose the queen completely, like just for free, and still be -6 because you're still up a rook. So you could lose 2 queens back to back and still have a completely decisive advantage. That's how good the position is. Rook f1. But at this point, he goes, you know what? My rook is hanging, so I'm going to bring my rook to the center of the board. Great. And now let's start feasting on the pawns. Then let's bring our pieces over here. Then let's make a couple of trades. Let's maybe trade bishops. A better way to play would have been rook b8. The bishop is trapped. Just completely trapped. Nowhere to go. But okay, rook e8. And now, nice idea here from Dan. Knight to h4. I know checkmate is on the board, but I think this game was lost for Dan before it even started. So the bishop is hanging. And Dan immediately gives a check, which I appreciate. Not Dan. Kazım gives a check. Rook to f3, and now Kazım gets in here with his queen. Yeah, that's really, really bad. And, you know, Dan has sort of proven in this game that he lives on the edge. And, yeah, he's big into adventure, big into excitement, probably puts it on his dating profile. Yeah, he instead of playing rook f2, he plays the more daring move, which is king f4, which loses in a million different ways. It's actually quite fascinating. If the queen just follows its trajectory, you will just checkmate here by accident. Like, you will look around and play pawn g6, and it's mate. Like, you just win by mistake. You didn't even mean to win. Now, instead of that, instead of taking the knight, Kazım plays bishop takes pawn. I mean, again, I don't really hate that move, considering the knight is still hanging. Queen e5 is probably still mate in a couple moves, and knight d3 and knight d5 are all sorts of different checkmates. And Dan now plays knight f5, which Kazım very promptly, because he was just on that square, just trades the knight, which is completely reasonable. King takes f5. And so now, you know, what you do here is you just give checks. You just give a lot of checks, or maybe you play queen e2 and you fork stuff, or maybe you attack the bishop, but what you do here is you give checks. You either give checks, or you make moves like queen to h4, which cut off all the king's space, right? You just look, right? Now, I don't like Kazım's move here. This is a little bit of a disconnected move. This move c5. Again, you are up 16 points of material, and you have an extra queen and an extra rook, so I kind of don't really care what you do, but I'm sort of educating, you know, like, you shouldn't push a random pawn if you can't really explain that move. Maybe he just wants another queen. Okay, God bless him. h4. You know, white does the same thing. Now, that's a free pawn, just in case you're wondering, but, you know, Kazım is like, I want another queen. I really liked having two queens. No, he didn't. He lost it immediately, but, you know, whatever. We want what we can't have. So c4. Rook h3. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't really understand what's going on over here, but to be honest, I can't really blame Dan because he doesn't have any pieces left. So, again, the fastest checkmate here is to bring the queen all the way back, force the king to g4, and then either f5 or h5 is checkmate in a couple. h5 is the fastest. King to f3, and now you remove all escape squares and you give a checkmate on the e3 square. You just need to not put your queen on a light square, and you will be fine. So rook to h3. Now, again, I would give a check. I would take some pawns. But remember this plan? Hey, remember c5 and c4? Yeah, in this position, Kazım just continues by playing c1. Okay, fine. I guess. I mean, he didn't even think for a second on that move, so I don't really know what the idea is, but bishop f3. Okay, now he will continue pushing his pawn. Exactly. There we go. That's perfect. Bishop goes to e4. Now, if you want to not get taken here, I would recommend sacrificing the rook. You can also give a check. The check removes this from this. Like, when the king is out open like this, you should attack the king. You shouldn't promote your pawn. Kazım plays c2, and he forces Daniel to give up the bishop. And now queen c2 check, and I mean, it's over, right? King to f4. Now, I would either take this pawn, but probably go for this pawn because it's so close to the white king. Okay, instead of taking on a2, Kazım goes, I really liked pushing pawns, right? So me like push previous pawn, so me gonna push this pawn too. So me play a5. Again, not a big fan of this because you should just go after the king and you will win the game within the next 5 moves by accident. But the good thing for him is, yeah, Dan doesn't really have a whole lot. Like, rook to e3 here trades the rook. If you really want to make sure you never lose this game, you might still stalemate because you suck. But if you play, you play rook to e3, if you remove every piece from your opponent's side of the board that's not a pawn, you're going to be completely fine. a4. I mean, I can't really criticize much. Black has played a fine game. Queen 8, fantastic. Now the pawn's just gone, cleared out of the way. You know, Dan's doing his best, but only one guy really has anything scary here. Rook h4. That attacks the knight, and my man Kazım, you would think blunders. No, he doesn't even blunder. He just doesn't even, I mean, just perfect game. Right, white plays g4, black plays a2, game is over. Rook h3. And now it's mate in a lot of ways. Again, if you want to simplify here, just trade the queen for the rook. It's literally not possible here to lose the game with black. It's not. But you don't have to sacrifice. You could just give checks. You got a ladder mate coming. Now clearly Kazem just hates queens because he just loses another one. So rook h3 played. White literally has 4 pieces remaining out of 16 on the board. They're all right there, and Kazem just could not be bothered to scan his pieces for safety. This is now his 4th queen. He has had 4 queens. This is the 4th one, and he loses the other queen. Now, again, he can win it back immediately, the rook, rather. He does it this way. Fine. Rook f3. And I think here Kazem was frustrated because he can't push any more pawns, really. But again, all you do is just you go with the knight, you go with the queen, you go with the rook, etc. Excellent. Rook e4. Finally back on track. A lot of stupid stuff. But all right, g5. Let's just go for ladder checkmate. Excellent. I love it. We're bringing the rooks. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're smart. You've seen enough of these videos. Some drama, some nonsense is going to happen. And I think you can kind of see where we're going. The king's takeaway square, rather getaway square, has been covered, and black is inevitably going to blunder something like, what do people blunder? Rook d1, rook c3, queen a1, rook c8, right? Yes, this is exactly how the game ended, actually. Rook d8 takes, rook e8, and in this position, white won. No, that didn't happen at all. No. Black played rook d2 check. Rook d2. King to h3. Knight a2. Got the queen involved. Could have just got the queen involved, but this is a threat. This is coming. Now, the rook literally cannot go anywhere, by the way. There is no back rank threat. So rook g3 is played. And, black, I don't love this move by black. But here Kazem plays rook g4. I get it. The idea is rook g4, queen g4, and takes. And then white just doesn't have any more pieces left. White has 1 pawn left, and black is going to make a 5th queen because Kazem is just really into that stuff. So rook takes g4, and black plays king to f8, losing the queen. So let me just, okay. So Kazem lost 1 queen. Then a while later, after promoting, he got, I guess technically he didn't get that other queen taken, but he proceeds to lose this queen too, and then he loses another one. This rook captured 27 points of queens. I don't know if you realize that. That is the same rook that came alive on the 19th move to take on f1, proceeded to move around in the game while black promoted, took the 2nd queen for free, just took a rook. That rook took 32 points of heavy pieces. That rook defeated 3 queens and another rook. And even still, black is completely winning. And up on the clock. You think black has 5 seconds, right? So now, black starts pushing his other pawn. Because that's really Kazem's MO. Rook f4. And in this position, the move rook to d5 defends the pawn. But instead of that, Kazem goes here. And Kazem proceeds to lose the final remaining heavy piece to the white rook. White has now captured 37 points of material with that rook. Heavy pieces. I haven't even counted pawns. Then Dan takes the knight, and then Dan takes the pawn. And Kazem wakes up and wins the pawn back. So now Dan has to demonstrate whether or not he knows how to win with a king and a rook. And these are 400s. That's a really difficult task. These guys don't know how to checkmate with a king and a rook. Look, Dan doesn't even know how to do it. He's just mindlessly shuffling pieces around. Until Kazum just walks into checkmate. To the same rook. 5 moves ago, the black king was out in the open, in the center of the board. Dan had absolutely no plan. Which is ironic because it rhymes with his name. And then black just walked his king. He just escorted his king to the worst possible position and lost. That white rook captured nearly 40 points of material. And it did capture 40 points of material. And it won him the game. Now you can see why this ruined my vacation. Get out of here.